All right. How's everyone doing? Good, good. All right. We've got a pretty exciting group here to talk about something we normally don't get to dig into. And as you probably saw from Joe's presentation earlier, there's some personalities as well. So we're going to have fun. Real quickly, my name is Hammad Chaudhry. I'm with Pomerleau. My role is to look after innovation and the digital construction team at the organization. I've been in the industry for about 15 years or so now, and I'll be moderating the session. And then, quickly do an introduction, gentlemen.
Sure. I'm Joe Good. I'm a VDC director with Gilbane, primarily over the Midwest division. So that's a few states in the Midwest, pretty much all the states around the Great Lakes. And then I've been in the industry a little bit over 10 years, really passionate about kind of all aspects of VDC, not just BIM coordination. So anytime I can veer out of a coordination meeting, I'm going to do that.
Sam Burke with McGough Construction. I've been in the industry for about 7 years, VDC project manager, and I've been primarily focused on projects in kind of the Midwest area.
Richard Orser, Senior PM with New Hudson Facades. Been in glazing for about 10 years, working a lot on the coast and about 20 in the industry. So cool to get into a specialization here. Definitely excited about the cmBuilder integration into the overall project coordination.
Yeah, my name's Griffin Doughty. I'm with Knutson Construction. I'm a construction project manager. Not really into the VDC world a whole lot, aside from what we're here for today, cmBuilder. But I've been in the industry about 4 years and kind of happy to share with everyone some of the experiences we've had with the software and the overall project as we move through here.
All right. So we'll get kind of right into it. The project we're talking about is a very unique thing, but it's not really about the project. What we want to focus on is the fact that it is a multi-billion-dollar project with multiple different teams and contractors in a dense urban environment with, I don't know, what is it, 2.4 million square feet or something like that. So the reason why that's the focus is, when do we ever get to sit down together and frankly talk about projects? So being able to remove the name and any of that history gives us a look behind the curtain, if you will. So before we get into some of the details around that, what is the project's kind of makeup when it comes to the contracts, who's who in the zoo, kind of, if you could explain that, because we've got 4 different companies up here, different, understanding. Could you help us get that?
Absolutely. So imagine, a campus, a large campus with a client who has many buildings on this campus and is obviously integrated with the community heavily. And they have a few different projects going on that they don't all want to award to one contractor. So in this instance, you have, I guess, 3 GCs or CMs that are kind of the major prime contractors on the job. 2 of them are a JV, so Sam and me, we represent the JV contractor, and then Griffin is with the other GC that's on the campus. And the scope of work ranges from new underground utility tunnels to, how many stories is it now? A multi-story high-rise hospital, basically, and a couple of those buildings, plus a parking garage and a space elevator. No space elevator. Multiple parking garages. So there's a lot of different types of projects, and naturally, it's all happening over the same, 5-6 year time period. So, you can imagine the campus logistics, interfacing with the community, interfacing with an active hospital environment that posed a challenge.
And for each of you, what kind of contract type? So the JV was that modified design build?
Yeah, CMAR between the JV, I don't know what our percentages are, but...
CM at risk. And then what about for you, gentlemen?
We are the same. Knutson is a CM at risk for our scope of work. Yep.
Yeah. All right, perfect. So now that we have that kind of understanding, let's kind of step back maybe from the JV perspective first. You guys are chasing the project, pretty competitive, I'm assuming, environment to get the bids together. You got the JV probably to share some of the risk and also add experience probably for the local market or whatever that may be. As you're planning the project, thinking about staffing, resources, how you're going to use the tools, all that, and then you get notified that your team's been awarded. how did you actually figure out now with this kind of complexity? You've got a few other contractors to coordinate with, all this complexity you guys just talked about. How did you manage getting that out? Because most JVs, as they happen on these mega projects, have a little bit of a blank slate, but you guys really had a lot more constraints.
I guess to start, it was I think it was Street, right? He mentioned just put a pen on paper. Like, we just started to develop something in terms of like a collaborative process amongst all of the stakeholders on the project. And what that looked like was very ugly. It was like a 50-page Bluebeam document that you guys were emailing us your pages of it. We were building them haphazardly. We had like 10 different people in there, and we were submitting it to the client, and they were kind of not that happy, right? They were like, this is a jumbled mess. I don't know if you want to kind of speak more towards like how you guys really had cmBuilder in your back pocket before that, and we're like, hey, we really should be using cmBuilder.
Yeah, I can touch on that. Like Joe said, it all started out with a series of logistics in a Bluebeam session that we were sharing. We'd send it back and forth saying, hey, we're going to be here at this time, so you can't be there. Or if you need to be there, you need to let us know why, what's the critical path. And taking that all into account, and, we talk a multi-billion-dollar project, and you can about imagine what that would be like trying to convey to an owner over Bluebeam sheets. And it was actually someone on our team, I believe we were relatively early adopters of cmBuilder, that said, hey, we have this tool, and it has the 4D capability to show how this project can progress through time. And we're like, well, we already have it. We're really not taking a risk. We're not taking a financial risk. Let's try it out and use it. And really, we took that leap, started there, and it took off. The client loved it, and we haven't looked back since.
I was also just going to add to that. It's also not just like, obviously, as you know, it's not just the owner that is looking at cmBuilder. It's also the city. It's the police department that that's in cmBuilder reviewing this with all of us to come up with the best game plan.
Well, that's some really good context, but there's something that we got to pull out of the story, which I'm hoping we're going to get some differences in how the business is conducted normally and how you guys kind of solve those problems. So before we get into that, how many people here are VDC professionals? Okay. How many are technology professionals? And how many are project management or superintendent field kind of professionals? Any architects, engineers? All right, very small. Okay. For the VDC people, I always get this question, you probably get it too, is we put a plan together, we want to put 4 resources on a project, we want to have this budget, these tools, so on and so forth, and then you're awarded and you realize all of a sudden, I don't have the people I thought I was going to have, I don't have the budget I thought I was going to have. Was that a reality you guys faced on this project?
I think it still is. The way the project's occurring is we're continuously getting updated drawings and new drawings, and we're at my level, we're very transparent with leadership in terms of like, hey, we need more staff, and we kind of look at that every 6 months, every year, of like in terms of like, do we need more people allocated to certain things? So,
and then Joe, on your side.
Yeah, we tried to. I mean, the remedies that we shared earlier is kind of what I'm going to vomit again.
I don't know if you're allowed to recycle content.
I'll just leave. So we tried to identify like the top priorities on the project as a whole, because you can imagine logistics is a big part of this job, but it's not the main thing, right? We still have to build these hospital buildings and these parking garage and coordinate underground utility tie-ins all around, how many block campus. So, there's a million other things that we had to focus on. So in terms of prioritizing where the VDC team would be most valuable versus, the amount of staff that we could allocate. And this is in a city that's not like a big metropolitan area, so even getting talent on site was a challenge as well. So all of those factors in place, what we decided to do was prioritize the VDC team professionals on separate tasks besides site logistics and really create the connection to cmBuilder as a limited path of we're going to give you models into cmBuilder, the current design models, the current construction models, and we're going to do, these campus-wide drone flights, give you the mesh so that you have like an updated Google Earth background, you have an updated model. As far as, remaining roles, we're going to stop there because our priorities needed to be elsewhere. So what we had to do is communicate to the project team, like if you want this tool, if you want this type of a logistics process, you need to have field engineers, you need to have superintendents that are dedicated towards the site logistics.
So you kind of bridge the gap, like you guys were saying, you and Alex, by trying to create this hybrid environment. You guys support it, pick it up. But the answer was, did you have staff allocated and end up with less in terms of like VDC?
In terms of VDC, yes.
Okay. So for any of you guys that feel like you're always getting the short end of the stick on projects, you're not getting the resources coordinators, some of the largest U.S. contractors and some of the most specialized folks feel the same thing that you guys do. It's not a novel thing to your company or organization. Thank you for that. Also, the way to get over that too, right? Like you get a hybrid approach. You got to get creative, think outside of the box, use your organization as the method for you to extend your reach instead of it being people on your team. So maybe you're like Hassam and you have 80 plus people. That's a very large organization, but most companies will not have that flexibility. Maybe if you're lucky, you're going to have a small team, right? So let's shift gears a bit, talk about project management. So, in the VDC world, you can get hyper-focused. We can talk about logistics, 4D, all that. Step back. For the superintendent, for the field to be able to build, you need your project managers to be able to think ahead. Is the material going to get procured? Is the schedule okay? Do we have the right contract methods in place? Is there anything we got to accelerate? Any design changes coming down the pipeline, so on and so forth? How did you deal with that, looking at the fact that it's some very complex project site, you're dealing with lots of different contractors, and then at the same time, you're thinking about technology, but if you step back, you're thinking about a much bigger picture. So when you found out there's going to be a Gilbane and McGough coming on, what were your thoughts? What were the risks in your mind that you initially were worried about?
Yeah, I think the initial risk that we at Knutson had was like, hey, are we all going to play nice in the sandbox, right? We talk about it all the time. We still talk about it to this day. And honestly, it's been truly remarkable. And I know from our side, and I could let the Gilbane and McGough teams speak to their side, but it's like we all have the same end goal in mind. So our side of the project is really delivering a lot of the infrastructure. So the power duct banks, geothermal, utilities, whether it be sanitary, storm, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, they need us. We need them to deliver this project, in full and to the best ability that we can to the client. And I think we both know that, and so it's been great. But that was one of our biggest initial concerns.
And then any issues too with the way your work was scoped or going that could impact if their performance was behind?
Yeah, that is a constant battle that we have down there. So with a lot of our scope being in the streets and that infrastructure, we have 35 blocks surrounding each one of the actual project sites. So that 2.4 million square feet is made up of 4, 5, 6 different buildings. And for us to get the utilities to them, we've got to be right there. So it's constant coordination. How are we going to keep you guys getting into your sites? How are we going to keep, your laydown? As we speak right now, we're halfway dug into their main laydown site and break area. So it is a challenge, but it's working together, and them knowing like, hey, if we want this thing to run, we have to find a time to get them in. So let's coordinate together. Let's figure out when that best time is.
And anything do you want to add as well from your perspective, kind of coming in and seeing different kind of conflicting priorities and being stuck kind of in the middle of that as well?
Yeah, definitely an interesting dynamic to work through. Very iterative and upfront, which is very helpful. Overall coordination, again, spread across several locations, and the kind of bell curve of activities as they ebb and flow is something that's a moving target, but as the teams come together, show their constraints, difficulties, where they're able to flex a little bit, it definitely supports the overall effort, and I think has resulted in positive coordination, collaborative efforts.
Where has it been negative?
I don't know if I could put my finger on an immediate negative one. I think the openness and honesty has definitely been something that's encouraged all the way through. So if there's a difficulty that someone's experiencing affecting another partner on the job, it's brought to the table and we work through it together. So far it's definitely been approached with that kind of can-do attitude in solving kind of the best possible outcome.
In terms of like the negativity, something that's just been a struggle is like, we're scheduling down to, not just the day, but to the hour, it seems like. And like you said, if one thing gets pushed, it's just that constant communication that we have to have, on our side, but then also, to the Knutson side. And on such a large campus, like that's where it's been just a challenge.
And do you guys use like shared Teams environment? Like how do you guys actually communicate now other than email?
Well, we have a number of coordination meetings amongst us every week, so that's one way of communicating. But from a project standpoint, we do share our schedules every month. Gilbane McGough holds our milestones, a number of them in their schedule, and we hold a number of theirs and ours. So it's every month when that schedule gets updated, we're updating not only our schedule, our progress, also any shifts in their milestones, and then any issues that we have coming out of that. From month to month, we figure out a time to meet on it, figure out what we're going to do. But to kind of get back to, a negative impact, and it's negative, but it's really just the nature of the beast when working on a project to this side. Each team has caused others delays, and so it is what it is, and it's how we work through them.
And we set that precedent that our little subgroups, because in cmBuilder, we have subgroups because the site's so big, so we don't have to like one guy editing the whole thing, right? But we set that precedent that everybody who owns their subgroup has to update cmBuilder to reflect what the actual work activity is. And you can't hide what you're doing if you're updating the work in there. And so, that's been a huge communication tool for us. I guess the negative is you can't hide. If you're delayed and you put that information in there that impacts, somebody else's little subgroup, they actually get to see that in cmBuilder first, and then they're informed of the conversations like, okay, you updated that in cmBuilder. Is that accurate? And then you say, yeah. And that could save some headaches because, we're trying to be collaborative in that 3D environment. That's the whole point of using cmBuilder, I think, on this project was like...
What was the count there? I think that's like the 18th cmBuilder.
I guess the other thing too is like we're obviously not just using cmBuilder to coordinate. So like I guess a plug to Revisto is like that's like our clash detection like software that we're using, and Knutson has like their own space that they're doing, but then Gilbane McGough has their own as well. And something that's really unique is Knutson has an entire scope of work actually inside one of our buildings. So that's been, I don't want to say tricky to work through. It's actually been kind of fun and interesting. We're taking a scope of their work, bringing it into our Revisto model, and then kind of same thing, we'll kick out ours over to them. And at no point have I felt like, obviously like, we have our contract with the client, you guys have their contract. At no point have I felt like that's been an issue. It's like you said earlier, like we have one goal and, we got to complete it.
All right. So real quick, looking at the audience, there's been a question that keeps coming up, but nobody addresses it on stage, and we have the opportunity here. If you're a Revitso enterprise or fan, put your hands up. And ACC, put your hands up. Oh, wow. If we would have asked this like 2 years ago, there would have been no ACC hands. That's wild. So now, gentlemen, you're using Revitso, there's probably ACC or Autodesk as well, Procore or some other platform. Joe, maybe you can kick this off. Like, how are you guys now with the JV trying to figure out which core platform to use? How much data entry duplication is occurring? How do you guys now shift that document back and forth? And if you got to give it to the client as well, like walk us through that whole ecosystem you're dealing with.
Yes. So again, we use those remedies, right? But what we did was we built a plan, and we built a BIM execution plan that was a joint BIMX with the client, with the designers, and with the GC that describes, here are the BIM goals and here are the BIM uses on this project. So a BIM goal is site logistics. The BIM use is cmBuilder. A BIM goal is advanced or enhanced 3D coordination. The BIM use is Revisto as an environment. And we evaluated tools that we were going to use instead of Revisto. Like, can we do this with ACC, with Navisworks? Yeah, Revisto is nicer. There's more features. We evaluated that with the client. We evaluated that with the stakeholders, and we made those decisions. So we built a plan, I guess is my first answer, to, tackle all of the needs of the project. And then we tried to emphasize that plan as much as we can and point to that as like a center of gravity for where do you find the latest drone image? Boom, it's right here. Like, where do you find the current site logistics plan or what's happening in this side of the project? Go to cmBuilder. Like, it's more of like a wayfinding that we've developed for the project to help with that main issue of like, where do I go to find the model? Because you could go to 3 different places to find the model right now, but the VDC team knows the 3 different places and how the 3 different places are interacted. But what we communicate to the ops team is go to Revisto for the model, right? So we try to create that wayfinding through the plan that we've developed early on that we analyzed way before.
Pretty kind of aligned across all the groups now, or is that still kind of a little bit separate depending on what part of the project you guys are working on?
I would speak for us. I think it's aligned where the JV has the contract with the owner. I know that Knutson has their own contract with the owner with their own environments, but where at least we overlap with scopes of work, we're in the same spaces, and luckily we all had like the general BIM requirement that we're going to model our scope of work. So because we started at that level playing field, we could be very flexible with maybe Griffin and his team are using ACC only. We still could like flex down to that if we needed to. We tried to use like a lowest common denominator, just in a worst case scenario. I don't know if anybody else want to speak.
I can jump in on that, and forgive me, I'm not in the VDC world, so when our VDC team talks with Sam and Joe about bridging and sharing certain parts of the model, that is way over my head, but they seem to do a really good job with it. And coordinating the pieces that it's really our touch points, right? So Sam's able to send those over to us. Our VDC team is able to send those over to them, and we have, like I said, we're working towards the same end goal. So there's no restrictions there. There might be a little sign of a piece of paper, but it hasn't ever held us up, I don't think, from making any progress in coordinating our models together from being under 2 different contracts in that perspective.
Yeah, something that I actually kind of still surprises me to this day is there is a pretty clear delineation between like what is our scope of work versus what is yours. And you may think like, well, it's like, okay, our tunnel tie-in is right here, so that's the line. But again, going back to Knutson's scope of work, or part of it being inside of our building, we actually have plumbing lines that interact with your space. So it's like I said, I've actually been very impressed with how easy that process has been.
Are you also as impressed by him?
I'll be honest, I don't work with Sam all that often. I will delay that to our VDC teams. I believe they have a presentation tomorrow. Maybe they can make a comment on that since we are recycling content.
I was gonna say Kirsten's probably somewhere in the stands. Is it a thumbs up? Has it been good or bad? If good, okay.
There you go. Thank you for that. Now, with your project management systems, just kind of trying to get back to that versus the client. So it seems like you guys have a good cadence for meetings to talk about frequently. You guys can coordinate using cmBuilder to figure out who's planning what and all those changes. But what about when things stop or a change comes up? How are you guys working through that? Because if they're working inside, for example, part of your project and their scopes, they're just trying to think about that chain of command can get pretty messy right now. Like owner wants to do a change order. Okay, it's with the prime between the JV, but then that scope is sitting with you guys. How does that all flow? Like, do they have a environment that you've been forced onto, or is that kind of very separated, relying on that mechanism of those meetings? And walk us through a change order in this kind of example, if you don't mind.
I don't know if I have a change order in mind, but like we did come across a case, I don't know, like 2 months ago now, where I guess we should clarify. We have our design side, or we're working with a different design team than them. And there's one scope of work where the two were not on the same page. So like we would send an RFI in on our side, they would send an RFI on their side, and then the two design teams actually had to kind of figure that out. And I think the initial workflow, at least in my head, of the kind of that conflict, that did take some time to work through. So instead of a typical RFI response that should only take 5 days, I think, I don't know, in my head it felt like it took a month and a half, which it shouldn't be, but I think we're slowly getting better at that. I think the latest RFI that we had to send in for it, I think we got a turnaround time in more like 7 or 10 days. So I don't know. Does that kind of help you answer your question? Or?
I'll just add a little bit to that. For this project, it's kind of a unique scenario where the client has, and with our scope being mostly infrastructure, power, MEP related, they have their own internal operating group that manages a lot of their power. And so a lot of times when we come to those discrepancies like that, they're a great one to lean on to say, hey, what do you really want to see as the end goal, as the end user of it, right? So we're showing this. They're maybe showing something different. Which one do you want? Do you want either of them? If the answer is no, then we work through that on both of our sides. So that is a blessing.
I will just say it. There has been like a design assist type IPD like misnomer on the project, where there's been like a unspoken expectation on the GCCM side to have like design assist trade partners and be more influential in the design process, but that's not how the contract is written, and that's made very clear to us every time we talk to the designer. There was a point in time on this project, I can speak for our designer, where we would have maybe not gotten any models at all from the design team. And that was like a 1.5 year process of getting them to agree to share us model files. So, and it kind of stemmed from that, that incorrect ideology behind the delivery method of like, is this design assist? Is this CMAR? Those are very different in terms of who owns responsibility from updating design. So that definitely is still a challenge for us. It's a hospital, so very clearly the design is going to continue to change until the first patient gets, put into the hospital. So we're constantly dealing with design issuances, and it's a challenge getting that related into the Revisto environment because maybe they don't share that with us, and it's also a challenge to compare that against the design documents that come out because maybe we don't get those, and then it's also a challenge comparing that between the Mayo working group that we're working with versus the one that you guys are working with. So it's, those are all the challenges that we face. So anytime you can have an environment that you have shared information, anytime you can set up collaborative meetings with partners that have like the same requirements, like that makes the whole thing easy. But it's not a perfect situation, right? We still face those challenges.
I was gonna make a bad joke and say I've got 3 remedies for you, but I think we've played that one too much now. The thing that's interesting is multi-billion-dollar project, way more money than any of the projects that typically you would think about, a lot more resources. Look at the expertise between the 4 organizations, not just VDC. Think about project management, field execution, scheduling, logistics, estimating, all those kind of pieces. And then also from the client side, they sound like a pretty sophisticated client. It's not like you have just, some client that's getting into development because, whatever. they're thinking about it quite logically. They have a portfolio. They've been doing it. Yet the issues are the exact same that I would face when I was doing a special project, right? I got to over communicate. I've got to go outside of the contractual boundaries. Even if the contract says X, I got to figure out how to do Y. I got to talk to people face to face. The thing I'm surprised about is you guys don't have a group chat yet, but I would recommend that, that's the only thing missing.
We do.
Yeah. So the logic there is, even though it's a large project, not many people have experience working on them, it's the exact same fundamental issues we face. And even if you're a mid-sized contractor, if you're a trade contractor, if you're a large GC, if you're an architectural firm, same thing. So that being out of the way now, let's kind of get to, I think this is the point. I don't know if Javi or Nikon are there for the rapid fire time or. Okay, so to keep things a little bit interesting for everyone, we're going to ask a few rapid fire questions. So one word or a very short answer. We'll just work down from you, Joe, onwards. So if everybody's ready for that, we'll get that going. We don't have any music, so if you guys want to get the energy up, give a big clap, because the energy's down. There you go. All right, let's just start it heavy. One word that describes the future of construction.
Optimistic.
On this specific job, but I guess holistically, I was just going to say transformative.
Leaning towards digital delivery, seeing a lot more of that on the front end and informing how we're actually building in the field.
I'd say planning.
All right. Now, most underestimated challenge.
Coordination.
You took my word. Spinning off for that, but collaboration, understanding just how big the lift was in that regard. Not a one-person, two-person conversation. There's 35, 45, 55-person lifts. So
I was going to say face-to-face communication. I feel like since COVID, we've people hide behind screens too much.
That's true.
Data security is my answer.
Oh, wow. Did not see that coming. All right. So what built trust the fastest, in your opinion, on the project from your individual perspective?
Like small wins, I would say. Small wins from like big project stakeholders.
I was going to say honesty. I know there's been cases where I've been late to, my deliverables to Kirsten, and I'll let her know like of XYZ of why that is, and she's honest with me as well. So honesty,
commitment, kind of riffing off of Sam's line there, but making sure we're following through on commitments.
I would say the give and take. Each contractor being willing to give up something to help the other one out, and then that favors almost always return. So that's built a lot of trust.
Something that technology cannot replace. I think it was Street saying he's the human that presses the AI button. So let's flip that around. What's something that tech cannot replace?
kind of using this answer again, but the face-to-face communication, we need that in our industry to be able to, be able to read that person and kind of see how they're, actually interacting with the situation.
I get ingenuity and personality.
Personality. Joe's a big personality guy.
Yeah, I would say the enjoyment aspect out of it, kind of bouncing off the fun. I think we're all in the industry because we enjoy what we're doing, and so the AI presence really it can enhance that, but it's never going to really take it away.
I think team building, at the end of the day, we're all out there building the final product. So making sure that driving to an end game together, enhancing it with technology.
All right. Now, the last question, now that you've kind of worked together, you've gone through it, if we could take you and drop you back at the beginning of the project, what is the one thing you would do differently to make the project go more successful?
I would try to influence the delivery method to be maybe like an IPD style delivery method, or a little bit more open-ended in terms of our relationship with the design team.
Ditto.
I would say just getting involved early. The earlier, the better. We personally were involved very early, but I think we could have benefited from being involved even a couple years more. Right off the bat, the client was operating off of an NDA, so it was a need-to-know basis, and we were unable to loop people in. That's really out of our control, but I would say if you're taking anything into projects like this, get involved as early as you can. And nobody wants to be on a project for 10 years, but it might help you sleep a little better at night.
And sorry, I think to that end, just understanding the key stakeholders, when the right time to bring them on is. To Griffin's point, definitely never too early per se, but don't want to spool up 5 years to do something a decade from now. So the right timing, the right partners, engage at the right time.
All right, perfect. So before we turn around for the audience to ask questions, anything we didn't talk about, anything that you want to get off your chest, here's your moment.
I will say this. I think I was expecting my company to not be a roadblock in getting cmBuilder for the job, and we ended up being the roadblock. And the champion was really Knutson, but it was also the client. And the client was really like, this sounds great. Get it done. Do whatever you need to do to get it done. Which, you know, happy wife, happy life, happy client, happy business. So I did not expect my company to be a roadblock, and it was because of data security. But we got through it, and it's been great. So it was a cool learning moment, I guess.
Anything else? No? All right.
Q&A?
Q&A.
Fantastic. So let's turn it over to the audience for questions. One thing I thought was interesting from an insight is just the co-opetition. You know, you're competing, but you're cooperating at the same time. And like, it's, you know, in software and tech, that happens a lot, but not so much in construction. I haven't seen that as much. A very unique project. Questions from the audience? Oh, the hands are flying up here. Well, Amir, and then we'll work our way down.
Okay, sure. A question about, I mean, we talk about multi-billion-dollar projects, but we see now a wave of special projects that are coming, and they also have the BIM requirements, or now they are getting into the designing within the Revit or 3D models, and we usually don't get a special team like this with the VDC, with the, I don't know, full-time VDC team. How do you scale down all of these, I don't know, coordination, cmBuilder, and all these work to the smaller projects that you have less resources?
You need to prioritize what's important to the client first. Does the client care more about a quality product through construction? Then maybe focus any effort or any internal resources you might have towards BIM coordination and building a team to produce a really high quality product, right? If the client has a higher priority of, I don't know how you're going to build the job, I'm confused how you're going to interact with the environment, shift your resources. But then you have a sacrifice, right? Like you can't, if you don't have the resources to help everything, then something's going to fall down. So either figure out how to prioritize the hottest needs that the client faces, or figure out a way to do as much as you can, but at like a minimal level, right? Because that's another strategy too of, you know, maybe I'll give you a logistics plan. Maybe it's not in cmBuilder. Maybe it's like something in Bluebeam, but at least it's better than nothing, right? And just having that mentality towards all those different things that you need to do on a project is better. Like I tell my VDC team that all the time. Like sometimes you're like finding coordination issues and you're going through, you know, coordination and all these things, and it's like overwhelming. Like, am I making any impact? It's like one thing you found in that model, you would not have found if you weren't there. So you did solve one thing. So just think about taking baby steps as well.
Yeah, I got one. You have talked about a lot of challenges. Thank you very much for all that. my question is more from the standard perspective. On this multi-billion-dollar project, have you come across a scenario where the information exchange requirements from the client side, maybe they talk about 19650 or they talk about quality standard, has that ever become a roadblock in terms of how we're advancing the project because of the delivery requirements that are set out very concrete that we cannot change and go around it? Do you have any example or a situation that you have come across on that project?
I could talk about the turnover model. Not all the requirements are concrete in terms of the modeling. They sophisticated clients these days are kind of asking for like buzzwords that they hear when they come to conferences. Like, can you give me a digital twin? It's like, well, what the hell does that mean? So not everything is concrete. Some of it can be formed together with the client. In this instance, there's a big question mark behind what does the end model deliverable look like and who's doing that work. So the way we're tackling that is pretty unique, I'd say, but we're trying to like guide the client towards a decision and give them the best option at the current quote, right? But we are pricing out things that are above and beyond what is currently in their spec requirement. I don't know if that answered your question. It's a good question.
Just some of this comes from the consultant setting those requirements on behalf of the owner, where owner does not understand the full implications of what those requirements would look like on a project. But you did answer it.
Okay.
Curious how you guys set up your cmBuilder with multiple GCs, and we're talking scenario from project down to scenario, and how you guys are playing in the digital sandbox, and how are we talking a project with one scenario and everyone's trying to play in that one scenario? We got a whole bunch of scenarios where they're kind of playgrounds, and then we can go transfer into a master scenario when we took equipment and stuff?
Yeah, I can take this one. That's a great question. So the way that we are operating right now is Gilbane McGough joint venture has the actual project as a home. Very particular about who are selected as editors. There's a number of them from the Gilbane McGough side just due to the scale of their project, and there's like 3 of us from our side on Knutson side. But you're exactly right. We have a number of sandboxes set up where you can kind of work through those logistics, and then we have what we just call the main scenario for all of the logistics in the downtown campus. And project teams take from sandbox to main scenario, and there also is editing that happens in the main scenario. Some of the things aren't easily transferable just because they're coordination touch points. And then that, I know that our project teams collaborate a lot. Before the multi-editor feature came out, it was like, hey, I need to get in there for 2 hours. I need to make some updates. And it's 6 hours. I know they're working on that with the partial editor feature now, but that's kind of how we've addressed it.
I'm going to chime in on that a little bit because the advanced duplicate feature that we have now was driven from this project. So what happened when we first started is the supers were like, okay, I have my scenario, you have your scenario, we have different scopes of work. How do we get it all on the same page? It was quite a bit of a roadblock. And so we prioritized the advanced duplicates. So those who don't know, you can like work in one scenario, just do a bunch of stuff and copy all those things into another scenario from one scenario to another. So not a full duplicate, just certain things, right? So you can say, I'm just gonna take my work, you take your work and merge them together. And then we're working on the partial editing. So we have multiplayer view, and now we're doing multiplayer multi-edit, which is a very hard feature. And we have that mock-up over there we'd love for you to try that out and tell us how it works, because as you can imagine, you're overriding each other's work all over the place. So there's tricky ways to handle that, but thank you for the guidance on that feature there. Another question. So we'll do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, thank you. My name is Usman. Great session. Just a quick question to anybody on the panelist. So we're talking about technology, all these things for any multi-billion-dollar project. So does it really matter if it's, let's say, a mission-critical project like a data center or something? Does something change in your technology or how you approach it, how you deliver it out? Thank you.
That's a really good question. I will maybe first say yes, depending on the owner. Some owners are in bed with certain technologies, like I'm thinking about like webcams, drones, progress tracking. So you are a little bit limited sometimes. Like one of our this client has their own environment besides Procore, which that's fun. But so yes to that sometimes a client can have a tech requirement that you have to adhere to. But I do think a lot of the tools on the marketplace right now are agnostic of type of project, right? You're building the same types of material, just in different order, and the complexity is a little bit different. But I think you try to analyze what's in the market that is the best fit, and like the leading horse in that race right now, between 360 photo platforms. You want to evaluate it and go with the one that you think is the best fit for your project. And I think that is not agnostic at all.
I can just add something real quick to that too, is it depends on the risk profile too. So like if you're looking at mission critical, you probably have certain types of equipment that have very specific requirements. So it'd be a lot easier to justify kind of real-time monitoring for temperature, humidity, leak, and stuff like that. But maybe if you have a different type of project, which is more of like a core build-out of like an industrial project or a warehouse, you don't really need those same risk mitigations necessarily, and it wouldn't make sense. And I think so that is another angle too, is if it's a hospital versus a data center versus a residential, what are those common things and how are you going to be solving them? Just to add on to that, yeah. Anything else, gentlemen? All right.
Hey, very much appreciate the panel. I thought you guys did a really good job. And we're facing a lot of the problems that you guys are talking about as well. So I kind of wanted to hear your guys' take on, for example, technology has changed to where we can get away with using 3 or 4 platforms versus 10 or 12, right? But then what happens is the lines between the use cases get blurred. So, for example, how do you guys go about determining what tool is used for what situation? A good example would be like cmBuilder and Revisto. For example, when do you access one versus the other? And it's more about how do you explain that to your teams versus the actual answer.
Want to go first? I've used Claude a lot to help. So has Alex, really. But like we kind of start like a tech stack implementation document where you define, okay, what are the core features I need? How is my team going to use this? Why do we choose one versus the other? And you just build a table and you start evaluating things that way. And then, you're analyzing multiple metrics for one platform. So maybe a good comparison, let me do drones because I know Cupix and Drone Deploy and OpenSpace all do drones, but like what platform do you want for the drone implementation on your project? You would evaluate, okay, I need a low-cost platform. I need something that all my project stakeholders need. The client wants weekly flights. And then you kind of build like all of these key components into your tech stack document. And then you explain, because of why I need this and because I have a cheap drone, whatever, I need to go with this platform. And then you make that visible to the project team. And that's probably the key piece, is like you develop this strategy, but you explain it to your operations staff as you're developing, so that, at the beginning of the project, when you're picking these tech solutions, you have a plan and you have a reason why, because definitely like 5 months down the road, you'll get a superintendent that's like, we got to use like this one tool that I use in another project. So let's get that up and running. It's like, well, no, we picked this one for these reasons, right? So it's just like building structure around the key things you need on that project, what resources you have internally, and what really does the client want.
Sure.
Sorry about that. One last thing about that is whenever you're doing that, so your BIM execution plan is basically kind of fill in the blank. It's not set in stone. So you're flexible when you approach those projects?
I can say at least on the McGough side, yes. Kind of like going off of the matrix thing, like McGough, we don't only do that, but we're lucky enough where we have pretty small jobs. We don't just have large ones. And with those small jobs, we'll continuously kind of test the different platforms. You know, like we'll have OpenSpace, we'll have the drone deploy ground, we'll have Cupics to kind of keep our eyes on what are they changing, because as everyone knows here, they're constantly changing, and then that allows us to kind of have a good idea of like, okay, for this job, Cupics is the best. For this job, OpenSpace is the best, depending on what the owner needs or what we need.
That's great. Okay. What? 30 seconds or less, because we're up against it. It's for Hammad. A question for the moderator. Your moderator's favorite moderator, Hammad. How good did Hammad do, by the way? Question.
Thank you.
Okay, so 30 seconds or less. You've been on the construction side. Then you went to contact. Now you're back to construction. Maybe what are 1 or 2, 3 insights that you think that maybe help you do your job better because of your experience on contact?
It's quite a loaded answer to, or question to give an answer to on the spot. 30 seconds or less as I'm thinking of the answer and just buying time here. I think it's just the fact that the technology, as much as it's important, and we want to, when we're on the tech side, think it makes the biggest impact and all the difference and all that kind of stuff, is a small piece of the bigger picture. And when you think about it, I think if we're doing our job as tech vendors, when speaking from that side of the industry, it should actually be about making it better for the industry and the people in it. And then being on the construction side again, is having a lot more empathy, I think, for the vendors that you're working with and knowing the constraints that they face. It is a difficult business. It is not easy. Now, being in construction on top of that for technology is probably the least, sexy environment. Also, the hardest one for an outcome that you want to look for as a technology individual. When you're joining a startup, you're looking for that exit liquidity event. Construction makes it very, very hard, in my opinion, to get there. So on the tech side, you're grinding, you're living up to the expectations that the construction individuals have. And maybe you're not seeing the same level of growth or inflection that other consumer tech does. So it's a very lonely road to walk. And I had to learn this the hard way on my own. So really, really big shout out to everybody who's working on the tech side. And if you're on the construction side, I think that's another thing too, is you're always getting hounded by these tech people as well. So it's very easy to shift through kind of the BS and what's not. But if there is an area that you're interested in, just connecting to give your frank feedback means the world, because it's people will go on the word that you say as almost gospel, and they don't know any better. So anyways, that's it.
That's great. Thank you.